Good afternoon, everyone. I believe it's 2 o'clock. Welcome to you all. Welcome to members of the public. I don't believe we have any press with us today. Please, before we start any proceedings, could you please make sure that all mobile phones are switched off because it interferes with our apparatus. And please excuse me if I've had laryngitis and my voice might fail by the end of the afternoon. Before we continue, I would like to, it's the end of the year really for the Planning Committee. It'll start again now in a few weeks again. And as your chair, I sincerely wish to thank all the members of the committee for their wonderful attendance. We're the largest committee in the authority of 16 members, and you've all been very, very good on your attendance. We do feel that we've lost a few when it comes to site visits, but that can't always be helped. But my Vice Chair, Peter Clark, and Opposition Roger Harris and I, we go out practically every week doing the delegated panel, and a lot of us see a lot more of the county with site visits than what we would otherwise do so. And no two applications are the same, as you know, and so it can be very challenging and very enlightening. And from what Phil said the other day, we're doing very well on our appeals, and also applications are up. So things are looking good as far as the planning is concerned in the authority. Before I start, I'd like to introduce you to my Vice Chair.
And Councillor Peter Clark.
And to my right.
Yes, I'm Robert Tranter. I'm the Head of Legal Services and the Temporary Monitoring Officer.
And to my left.
Philip Thomas, Development Control Manager.
Paula Clark, Planning Control Manager.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services Officer.
Right, thank you. And also one of the biggest occasions that we have lost George Ashworth this last year. He's retired, and I'm sure he feels now with the LDP and everything done that he's left us all in good stead. So I'm wishing him a retirement now that this year is over. Right, we'll now go on to the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
Apologies, Chair, from Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Richard. Declarations of interest. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Blakeborough, she did say she tried to put them through, but they might not have got through because she's feeling unwell.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anyone else? Councillor Doug Edwards, sorry.
Declaring interest in DC 2014-00351, personal and prejudicial.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I also have a declaration of interest, and that is 01451. I shall leave the room when that is considered, and it will now be moved to the first of the agenda because we have somebody speaking, and my Vice Chair then will conduct that part of the agenda. And also, please be aware that we are live streaming. Thank you. I'll do the minutes now first before we do that application, and that's on page 3 on the agenda. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. Those are the minutes of the Planning Committee of the 14th of April. Does anybody move? Thank you. And seconded. Show of hands for approval, please. I'll sign those at the end of the meeting. Right, you're all right now to carry on that. I'll leave.
So the first application we're going to deal with this afternoon is on page 13. It's DC 2014-1451, erection of a rural enterprise at Cum Newth Farm in Rockfield. Philip, please.
Thank you, Chair. The existing dwelling at Cum Newth is situated about 100 metres from the yard.
Hold on, Philip. David?
Yeah, on the correspondence, you've got the members attending, and you've got E-Evan, or you've got E-Evan. Should it not be E-Evan?
Yeah, sorry, it's entirely sorry, David.
Thank you, David. We'll put that right for you. Sorry, Phil, carry on.
There is late correspondence on this, and I know members have had that, some of it quite late, so would they like it slightly longer to just digest
Would you
It's all
like
what's
time-
been handed out
Have
more
you read
recently.
this late correspondence from this morning?
I know you've had some a few days ago, but
Are you all
there's
right?
additional. There's been quite a dialogue on
Yeah. Does anybody
this
want time?
application and the other one.
Yeah. Does anybody want time to read it? No? Carry on then, Phil.
Okay. So this is one that we did look at the other day on our site visits, in terms of looking at the site, and have some photos and plans to show you during my discussion. So the existing dwelling at Come Near With is about 100 metres from the yard, and it's without, and the actual current dwelling does not have a restrictive occupancy condition on it, and that's owned and occupied by the senior partners, father and mother of the business. The son, who is also a partner in the business, owns and occupies a house in Monmouth, about 5 miles from the site. And the site of the proposed dwelling is about 50 metres from the existing yard. So let's just have a quick look at the photos. That's the paddock where the dwelling would go, and so that's the track down to the farm buildings. And that's showing the farm buildings, the distance. The fork to the right goes down to the farm buildings, and the fork to the left goes up to the existing farmhouse, and that's the field where the dwelling would be located between the two arms of the road there, the lane. And that's showing it in context between Rockfield and Maypole, and that's the site. So you've got the existing dwelling up here, and then the farmstead in terms of the agricultural buildings there, and that's the site there. And you see there's the road where they fall, coming directly off the B road there. And that's showing a block plan showing where the dwelling would go, with the garage next to it and the new driveway leading in from the access. And then that's the elevations. And then that would be the garage. I think that's, and there's the floor plans. So it'd be a 3-bedroom, relatively modest 3-bedroom house. So I'll just go back, I'll leave it on that one for now. So the supporting information states that the site was chosen close to the farm buildings to enable the regular attendance and inspection of livestock during critical need periods, such as lambing. It's argued that it is essential for the applicant to be on the site for the proper management of the farm, and in addition to the critical need periods, and practically the proposed location facilitates this. This is a traditional farm enterprise. The business has moved from a mixed stock farm with the last store cattle sold in 2002 to a sheep farm comprising 400 ewes and followers, together with arable. All lambing is carried out in the buildings in 2 batches between January and approximately June, over roughly 6 months. The applicants are a partnership of father, mother and son, and the parents own approximately 167 acres, and have granted a business tenancy over the whole area to the farming partnership. And a further 105 acres is held under secure tenancies, giving 272 acres of secure land. The main yard comprises a traditional range of agricultural buildings. Of the whole area of 272 acres, 173 is dedicated to arable, with 9 acres of woodland and the remaining 90 being of temporary grassland. An appraisal was requested by the council to justify the proposal, having regard to relevant planning policy and guidance, since applications for planning permission for new rural enterprise dwellings must be carefully assessed by the planning authority to ensure that a departure from the usual policy of restricting residential development in the open countryside can be fully justified by reference to supporting evidence. The council uses an expert to assess the information submitted by applicants. The key document to refer to when looking at such proposals is called Technical Advice Note 6, or TAN 6, produced by Welsh Government. Paragraph 4.4 of TAN 6 does clearly state that with a proposal such as this to transfer a farm's management to the younger successor by enabling a second dwelling to be built on the farm, there does not have to be a functional need test, and that's acknowledged. However, paragraph 453 of that guidance indicates that the successor, must be critical to the continued success of the farm business. Paragraph 453 of TAN 6 also states that it must be demonstrated that the need cannot be met in any other reasonable way. In this case, we consider that the test is not fully met, as need could possibly be met in another way which has not been explored properly. For instance, a successor potentially living in the existing farmhouse, which might be extended. And secondly, and importantly, there is the issue that the need suggests that a worker only needs to be on site for 6 months of the year during the lambing period, which undermines the contention that the successor is critical to the continued success of the farm business. In terms of the financial test within TAN 6 that needs to be met to show the business is viable and has a reasonable prospect of remaining so, the Council's advisor has now concluded that sufficient evidence has been submitted to meet this test. As noted on page 19 and 20 of the officer report, the subdivision and extension of an existing dwelling on site to form 2 required dwellings is a factor that is relevant from a recent appeal decision, and it is felt that this aspect has not been properly demonstrated in this application. The agent has offered this morning reasons relating to the position or line of a drain, the proximity of the road, and changes of level as inhibiting potential extensions. Drains, as a constraint, can be overcome through careful building, design or engineering, or possible diversion. So we're not persuaded at this stage by that line of argument. It's concluded that it has not been reasonably demonstrated that the management successor is critical to the continued success of the farm business, and that the need could not be met in another way, such as by use of temporary accommodation or an extension to the house to form a reasonable annex. And also, given the need for a full-time worker to be located on the farm itself, is only proven for 6 months of the year only, not all year round. So we'd recommend refusal.
Thank you very much, Philip. Obviously, it's Ruth's ward, so she can't speak on this at the moment. Anybody else who'd like to have to talk about it? I'm sorry. We have a representative from Langattock Viory and Avon Community Council, Mrs. Fitchett. Would you like to address us, please? Is it 4 minutes or 6? 4. If you can clearly state who you are, you have 4 minutes, and we'll let you know when 4 minutes is up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Diane Fitchett, speaking on behalf of Langattock Vibonabel Community Council. We were disappointed to hear that this application has been recommended for refusal. As a community council in a very rural area, we are committed to aiding young people to carry on farming and continue their family traditions. Mr. and Mrs. Jones are the 3rd generation of this family to farm in this area. Mr. Jones has achieved success in his education, culminating in top grades from Harper Adams College. He has management skills and ambitions for the future. He is capable of securing a well-paid management position, but wants to devote his life to the family farm. He has worked on the farm for 10 years and took over the management in 2010. This has all been done legally and in accordance with the TAN 6 requirements. As mentioned, the farm has 400 sheep and some arable acres, and while it is obvious that workload is greater at lambing time, we all know that looking after livestock is a 24/7 job. Mr. Jones would like to increase the size of the flock, but if this development is refused, the future looks uncertain for yet another farming family. Mr. and Mrs. Jones Sr. have given their working life to the farm and would like to take more of a background role, especially as Mr. Jones Sr. has some health issues. Mr. Jones owns a house in Monmouth, 5 miles from the farm. He has a wife and 2 young children, but gets to spend very little time with them. This obviously puts a strain on a young family. His home is a 2-bedroom house which will soon become unsuitable as he has a young girl and a boy, and there would be little opportunity to buy a suitable larger property nearer the farm. The existing farmhouse as already mentioned, is not tied to the business. It is solely owned by Mr. and Mrs. Jones Senior, so plays no real role in the farm itself, apart from them living there at the moment. But furthermore, if farming is to continue through the generations, young families need to live on the farm. A youngster who grows up in a town is unlikely to understand the whole ethos of farming life. If the family were living on the farm, Mrs. Jones would be able to help with lambing and shearing, etc., while Mrs. Jones Senior could watch the children. You have all read the report from Mr. Ewan Williams, I hope, clarifying the understanding and interpretation of the TAN 6 policy, and are fully cognizant with his arguments. As a community council, we felt that the application was very well put together and was a textbook example of the reasons for the Welsh Government introducing TAN 6. We fail to see the reasons for proposing the refusal. Mr. Williams was in fact the person called upon by the Welsh Government to draw up the policy, so he understands every nuance of the application. In your evaluation, you agreed that the location is suitable. There is no need for a new access. The visual impact is acceptable and the business is accepted as a qualifying rural enterprise. You state that residence on the holding may only be necessary for 6 months of the year. A farm manager is needed all year round, especially if the senior members of the business are wanting to take a step back. We believe this is not a solution, would put more stress and strain on a hard-working family. In light of, you'll just have to take me a bit ad hoc at the moment because I've only just become aware of this morning's developments. So I just want to go and... Is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was very quick. I didn't think I'd fill the time. Yes, okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Right, we had a site visit there last Friday. Anybody wish to comment on that? Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a great deal of sympathy for this application, but I'm afraid that sympathy doesn't go quite as far as going against the recommendation. I still feel that there are courses of action that could be explored a little bit further or a bit more detail, but I don't think that the answer is necessarily the creation of another dwelling. But I wanted to record the fact that I do have a great deal of sympathy for the applicant, and I can see why they're making the application.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I also understand and have sympathy, but we're talking about one of the most critical types of application that we get on this committee, which is building additional property in the open countryside, and we'll need to be absolutely certain that all the criteria that we need to see satisfied are satisfied. If there are slight differences that we can discuss and offset some of the criteria, that's one thing. But the important thing here that stands out is the 6 months period of lambing, which I must admit I hadn't heard of a period that long before. But I'm not a farmer, so and that's the thing that concerns me more than anything else. The application says that the period for absolute having to look after the stock is 6 months, and so that's a sticking point as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Dubby.
Thank you, Chairman. I was really persuaded, I think, by the correspondence that came in last night, which for me was quite comprehensive and provided me with a little late night reading before I think I got my head around it. I thought the case was pretty persuasive that was put forward. The other thing is that stays in my mind is that we are looking for young people, especially people that are as ably qualified as this young man and his family, to stay in farming. We are looking for our farms to grow in profitability, and this is what the applicant says he wishes to do. He wishes to grow the business beyond what it is at the moment. And as far as I am concerned, I don't see how you can grow a business that is as hands-on as farming without being on site to do so. I think, as the lady said, behind, I'm sorry, I'm bad on names. As far as I can see, there is no way that anybody who wants to grow the business can do so remotely without having hands-on. Farming is a hands-on business. The other thing is, while I was looking yesterday, I had a good sort of walk around from the various areas around the site. And it did seem to me that where they want to build the house, it fits into the topography, if you like, of the land perfectly. It isn't invasive. It is a well-designed building. It's a lot better than some of the ones we get in here, I dare to say. So, from my point of view, I think this is a worthwhile enterprise, and I will vote for it. I think it's appropriate. It's what we want in the countryside. I wish them all the luck they need to prosper, and I will support this.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. Councillor Maureen Powell.
Thank you very much. I can understand, I feel sympathy for them, but 5 miles from Monmouth, I worked on a farm for many, many years, and I was married to a farmer for 18 years, and one of the farms I worked on, it was 5 miles from one end to the other of the farm, and they weren't allowed to build any extra buildings there. The farmhouse was for the person who was running the farm, and when the son went to take it over, the elderly couple went into the house which the son had, and the son carried on. Because 5 miles doesn't take long to go, and even when you live right on the edge of where your sheep are lambing, you don't necessarily look at them every minute of the day. You can't. You go and see them, and if they're about to lamb, well, you come back again or you stay there. But 5 miles isn't a big distance to travel.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Councillor Wintle.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't believe the report on your saying that farming, it's only working 6 months with sheep, and then they don't. You ignore the sheep, then you've gone on to arable. If you've got livestock, if you're not tending them every day, you've got dead stock. As simple as that. So that's a lot of cobblers. And then reading through how they've, whoever wrote the report has itemised it, so you spend so many hours doing this and so many hours doing that. You don't. If you're on a farm, you're moving from one thing to another, to another, to another. I'd have to see anybody who can itemise how many hours they actually work. In the small amount of agricultural knowledge that I have, I know damn well that you can be working all hours. So when we've got a situation where you've got a young lad wants to go on the land, which is a rarity nowadays, most of them don't want it because it's too much hard work. His father's suffering from a bad back as a consequence of farming. I suffer from a bad back without having to go through that, so I know what it's all about. You can't do anything, he can't do anything to help him. So you need somebody on site. And I agree with what David just said, and I fully support it.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? With some, Councillor Evans?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to support what David said just now. I agree with everything he said. We are trying to keep young people in work, and if this application goes through, they're building their own property. We are crying out for housing in Monmouthshire. That will leave a property empty for somebody else to take up. As far as I'm concerned, I will support the application.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dovey, can you switch your microphone off, please? Thank you. Right, I think you've all... Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor?
Are we allowed to ask the officers for their comments on what has been said by the members, please?
By all means, yeah.
Well, I haven't got anything further than just to comment that, I mean, you do have to look at it in quite technical terms. I think you can't just assume that there's work all the time there. Some for instance, arable crops don't need somebody necessarily there all the time to actually be a presence on site. Appreciate with livestock, it's a slightly different situation. I think the argument here is that quite technical assessments have been put together on this, and the applicant's own assessment concluded that there was really a 6-month need for somebody actually being on 100% present on the farm unit itself. So that information was offered from the applicant's agent. So and the tests, we don't feel that the tests in TAN 6 have been met in this instance. We don't like coming to these conclusions. We have a strong degree of sympathy with the applicants as well. But we just feel that having done the assessment and used a professional advisor to analyse it, this is his conclusion. And certainly as officers, I wouldn't feel comfortable in recommending approval for it, which is why we've come up with this recommendation. But obviously it's the gift of members now to determine the application.
Okay. I think we've had a good chat about it. Would somebody like to move it one way or the other, please, so we can take a vote? Councillor Tovey? Okay, is that seconded? Councillor Wintle has seconded. Will those show, please, for approval of this application?
1, 2, 3, 4.
And those against, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And
7 against.
I'm abstaining because I didn't visit the site.
And are there any 2 abstentions?
Okay, therefore I'm sorry, but this application is turned down at this time. Thank you. We now go back to the agenda and I'll bring the chairman back in. Right, back to item 3 now. Page 3.
Right, okay, everybody, we'll now carry on with the rest of the meeting. We'll go back to now the rural enterprise dwelling, now at Tynecastle. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. You're declaring interest on this one. You presenting this, Phil? Okay, Phil.
Okay, this is again another quite technical assessment, just like the last one. This is slightly different in that there is actually no dwelling on the farmstead itself at the moment, so there's no succession agreement, no younger successor farmer taking over in this instance. This is for the first dwelling, if you like, in amongst these buildings. So it's an outline application to be situated in the southeast corner of the site in close proximity to the existing poultry sheds. Those who were fortunate to go to the site visit the other day could see it in context. That's the nearest poultry shed to it. I think it was slightly further up the slope, really, on a sort of a spare piece of land near the poultry units where this would go. Let's have a quick look at the photos. That's an in context where the farm is, just northwest of Newcastle, and that's showing where the that's showing where the farm building would go. The bungalow turning area here, and that was a biomass boiler building, a building accommodating that, which we saw and we parked down here, and then turned round and came back out. You see the big poultry sheds all around there. So Tea Castle comprises 2.4 hectares of land bought in 2001, and the adjacent house and converted barns were sold separately to an unconnected third party. Tea Castle was bought with consent for 2 broiler sheds, but now has 3 chicken rearing buildings extending to over 4,000 square metres, with a control building to the north and a wood shaving storage building to the south, which we saw the other day, but no dwellings. An office structure has apparently been used for temporary accommodation for the farm worker during the catching periods. The land is dominated by the intensive poultry buildings, and this application seeks to accommodate a manager and his children within a 2-bedroom bungalow. The supporting information states that the bungalow has a footprint of just 90 square metres and is therefore, and it would not be costly to build. The supporting information states that the application site occupies the clean air position of the site to the southeast as the prevailing winds blow southwest to northeast across the site. There is a dwelling at Little Castle Farm, which the applicant also owns, but the manager of the poultry enterprise currently lives in Abergavenny, and both dwellings are around 20 minutes driving time from the chicken buildings, probably a bit more actually, knowing the local roads. The chickens are kept for meat production, with 120,000 birds changed approximately 6.5 times a year, reared from day-old chicks to 6 weeks under contract. Again, an appraisal was requested by the council to examine the need for the proposal in accordance with relevant planning policy and guidance, since applications for planning permission for new rural enterprise dwellings should be carefully assessed by the planning authority to ensure that a departure from the usual policy of restricting residential development, the open countryside, can be fully justified. The siting of the proposed dwelling is in close proximity to the existing poultry sheds. The site is very tight and is dominated by the sheds, which cover the majority of the space that is capable of being built upon. The site is very well enclosed by existing features, including landform, the large existing poultry sheds, and strategic tree and hedge planting that has been undertaken over the years to screen the sheds. The proposal is for a small bungalow, as said, which will not be widely visible in the surrounding landscape. And the siting of the proposed dwelling is considered acceptable in principle, and the existing access is also considered suitable. The main issue is the principle of establishing the dwelling on this farm, which is addressed in line with the relevant tests as set out in Welsh Government's Technical Advice Note 6. The chicken enterprise is accepted as a qualifying rural enterprise, and this proposal is assessed as being for a new dwelling on an established enterprise. As the 2 farm enterprises, because there's also a related one at Little Castle Farm, Raglan, as they are run and presented separately, the pig enterprise at Little Castle Farm at Raglan and the land and farmhouse at Little Castle Farm have not been taken into account. However, for guidance and an assessment under TAN 6, paragraph 4.5, has also been carried out taking into account the submitted evidence. The applicant has to meet the tests in TAN 6. There has to be a functional need for a full-time worker to be present at the holding at all times. And secondly, the proposal has to meet the financial test to ensure that the enterprise is financially viable and has a reasonable prospect of remaining so. Sufficient evidence has been submitted to satisfy the functional test in this instance, and the need for a full-time worker on site has been satisfied. However, there is concern from the Council's expert advisor that the financial test has not been met. In broad terms, the turnover is very large and the relative profit is small, with a relatively small fluctuation in price, or indeed an outbreak of illness potentially resulting in a large impact on profits. In very simple terms, for every 1% drop in sale price, there's potentially a 10% drop in profits. It is concluded by the Council's expert advisor that the financial test has not been satisfied. The application evidence remains too fragile to afford it discretion on one of the primary tests in TAN 6. And in view of the above, the application fails to meet the required tests to justify new dwelling in the open countryside and is therefore recommended for refusal. Further comments have been submitted in late correspondence by the applicant's agent to challenge the council assessor's view. The agent argues that a reasonable profit can be achieved by maximising the conditions that will meet what we call the sweet spot. That means achieving the optimum number of birds at the target weight, which are in the best health and condition, and on reaching that weight and condition in the optimum time. The enterprise can then receive the highest level of payment for which a unit of this size can be significantly more, and a unit of that size, can be significantly more compared to a poorly performing crop of birds. So it's getting the optimum number and health and weight of birds. And the agent is arguing that to do so, they actually need to have somebody on site at all times to manage that. However, the conclusion still remains that the business is as intensive as it can get and yet remains financially fragile. So, on balance, our assessor still considers that the financial test just fails. So again, particularly in this instance, it is on balance. We would recommend refusal in this case.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Phil. This is in my ward, and most of the members were there on Friday to site visits. It is a very close-knit, built-up area on land to any interpretation wouldn't be utilised for crops or anything like that. It's very secluded, and to be honest, to get there in 20 minutes, I know it's rumoured that I'm a fast driver, but I think I would be very pushed to get there in 20 minutes from Raglan or Abergavenny. And when Phil mentions the profit in it, well, nothing is more fragile or unpredictable and fluctuates more than what it does in agriculture, whatever type of agriculture you're in. And one thing that concerns me, a couple of winters ago when we had heavy snow, a farm quite close to this one were rearing turkeys, and he was absolutely distraught because the snow had filled the lane. Could he get feed in or turkeys out, because somebody has to be there overnight, because the birds usually go out, as most people know, in the early hours. And if there is a problem there, no one's going to get there in 20 minutes for a start. So personally, I would be very favourable for this application. So anybody, as I speak now, I might sum up at the end as being the ward member, but I will take views now from the committee. Councillor Murphy first, please. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Chair. I alluded to the fact in the last application that they are absolutely different, although we're asking for the same thing. And this time round, I cannot understand our consultant saying that if a whole shed full of birds gets wiped out, chances are that it'll make it unprofitable, but they wouldn't have been wiped out if there'd been somebody on site there to attend immediately. And I know from what I've read and what I do know that this sort of enterprise is on a knife edge. If that boiler stops working, in 20 minutes, all those birds those birds will be dead. Profit must disappear. And as Phil's already said, that building, if it gets built there, is absolutely unsaleable. I would have thought it wouldn't be a trial. Let's put it that way. There is a difference between this application and the last one, and I would second what Phil has just said.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Dovey?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I won't go over what has been previously said because I agree with all of that. It's in here, it says fair comment, but it is the circumstance of this business set out clearly in the accounts which make it more precarious. I mean, we presumably then the business is earning sufficient money. There's a lot of capital cost involved in putting these buildings up, sheds and all that sort of thing. That doesn't come at nothing. And we haven't got an idea of how the accounts are made up. What is the thing that is making this so edgy? I think the fact that, as Councillor Murphy has said, that our expert has looked at this. He's looked at it through a very narrow prism. There's no doubt about that. And I mean, so what is so different about this one? I mean, if you are going to be successful as a chicken farmer, you're all going to be plodding this path, and everyone is going to be aiming for the sweet spot. There's a sweet spot in every business. My mind's wandering now about other things on sweet spots, but you know what I'm trying to say here. I don't see why this one is so different from any others. So if we had another one come up, would our expert around and say, no, we don't want this because I think it is totally wrong. And he admits, I mean, the norm is 2.5%. These people are banging in 6%. I mean, on the face of it, they are extremely successful and know what they're doing. Yeah. I think who am I to say, but I think the judgment by our expert is not a good one, and I think I would be prepared to support this for all the other reasons that could be endanger the success of this, and they are physical ones that need to have somebody on site to ensure that they don't have.
Thank you, Councillor Dovey. I don't know how many members are familiar with Sun Valley that used to build big sites in the 50s and 60s. On the start of the development of the site and big sheds, there was always a bungalow there built at the same time for a manager to be in because of the nature of the business. Anybody else now, other members who wishes to comment on this application? No. You propose approval? Councillor Murphy, Councillor Harris, seconded. Could I have a show of hands, please? Sorry, we now go to page 9. Doug. Top came off my pen. Rob, why is she declaring an interest?
It's a personal thing,
Right. Right, who's presenting this? Paula? You're presenting this one, Paula?
Yes. Thank you,
Right,
Chair.
Thank you.
This application seeks retrospective consent for the erection of an extension to a stable block and the refurbishment of the existing stables at Mistletoe Cottage, St Albans. An appeal has been lodged against non-determination of this application. Therefore, members cannot determine this application today. However, a decision on whether members would have approved or refused the application is needed to forward on to the Planning Inspectorate and to deal with the appeal. Mistletoe Cottage is a dwelling in large grounds which also contains a cattery business and menage, stable block and horse walker. The stables are located to the southern boundary of the site adjacent to New Barn Workshops. It is proposed to refurbish the existing stable block and extend it to the east to create 4 stables and a tack room, replacing the concrete walls and corrugated sheet roof with a reconstituted stone blockwork, wooden doors and an artificial slate roof. The application has been brought to Planning Committee as the delegation panel were unsure about the suitability of the proposed materials. Members visited the site last week and we viewed the stables from the nearby footpath. Whilst the stone is a light yellow limestone colour, it is likely to fade over time and blend in with the existing materials used within the site. The proposed development is therefore considered to be in accordance with policies LC4, DES1 and EP1 of the LDP, and officers have therefore recommended approval of this application. Yeah, if we just run through the slides, what you can see is the extension to the stable block. This is the retrospective part, which has been built without permission. That side faces onto the footpath on the racecourse edge, which we looked at on Friday. That shows the existing stable block with the corrugated roof and the blockwork walls painted, which is in poor state of repair. And that's the dwelling there on site, Mistletoe Cottage. And you can see the cattery in the background. That's the cattery. And if you notice, the applicants have used various colour stone and a yellow, is that a brick fill or stone on the right-hand side? I think it's reconstituted stone, yeah. So there's a mix of materials on site. And that's the location of it, at the southern boundary there, with the extension shown in white, next to the horse walker. And that's the plan. It's going to be 4, as the existing, 3 stables and a tack room, and the extension will provide an extra stable on the end. And that's what is proposed to look like, all done in reconstituted stone with the slate roof. Okay.
One question, Paula. Some of it was like breeze block. Are they replacing that on the original?
Yes. The original breeze block walls will be replaced and be rebuilt in reconstituted stone to match the extension on the end.
Right. Thank you, Paula. Maybe not, then anybody wishes to comment? Councillor Murphy. Councillor Harris, then Councillor Higginson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as a member of the delegated panel, we looked at this, and it's obvious. You can see the new structure is far better looking than the old structure, but nevertheless, it's in a very accessible spot there, and we thought with the materials being used there, it would be better that we spread the word to the rest of the panel, so to speak. But whatever happens, and I think Phil has summed it up, the structure that's being built there is far better than the one that was there before, and as Paula says, the colouring we hope will mellow down, but nevertheless it's a good substantial structure, and I think I'd go along with Councillor Murphy that we should approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Higginson.
Yeah, I go along with the two previous speakers, Madam Chairman. I mean, it's not going to be intrusive to the local area, not as I see it, and at least it will tidy it up anyway and make it look. It should make it look better than what it is at the moment.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to comment? As long as they tidy the yard as well. But that's not part of the issue. And yes, we were concerned because there wasn't quite so much had been built when we saw it. It did stand out quite a lot, but as you say, if it weathers down, hopefully it will blend in with the surrounding area. So do we vote on this or just, yes? You've moved it then, Councillor Murphy, and seconded by Councillor Harris. Can I have a show of hands then, please? It's unanimous, I think. Unanimous. Yeah. Right. We now go to page 21, and this is in Caldecott, Woodstock Way. Okay,
Thank you,
Phil?
Chair. Yeah. As part of the ASDA development, it was identified that there was a need for clear links between the new supermarket and the existing town centre to encourage pedestrians visiting the supermarket to combine their visit with a linked trip to the town centre to help enhance the vitality and viability of the central shopping area. In the outline application for the supermarket, it was agreed that the developers would make finances available to resurface part of Woodstock Way while making it pedestrianised, and to make improvements to the public realm in the area between the proposed new store and the existing town centre. And this current application proposes those enhancements, and the work includes reconfiguration of the Waitrose car park. Just have a look through there, which we're looking towards. That's a service yard through. So that the pedestrian link would actually accommodate that area, the edge of the car park there, and the car park would be pushed in somewhat and realigned. There'd be new tree planting and soft landscaping, resurfacing the pedestrian route with block paving, which would occupy part of that car park, and then provision of bollards to separate pedestrians from vehicular traffic, upgrading of the pedestrian route between the one-stop shop and the cross with new tinted asphalt, and that's that route there, which isn't the greatest at the moment. Not well lit either, and to have 2 metal seats fixed to the ground and a new totem sign as well. Just run through, so that's where that right-of-way merges. So that's the site area, and then that shows the layout of the car park. Excuse me a moment. So as Colin Phillips helpfully pointed out when we were on site, the actual car park comes right out here. So that would be pushed in somewhat and reconfigured. We'll lose 3 spaces overall, but I think you'll agree it's actually better laid out. There's disabled parking right close to the town centre. There'll be opportunity for landscaping, and more importantly, it creates this opportunity to create this paved segregated pedestrian walkway through to the town centre there, linking up with the public realm works here, and also there's the route then to the cross, which will be lit and resurfaced to create a more interesting and enticing route between the two 2 spaces. The whole purpose of the proposed improvement is to enhance the attractiveness of the space between the 2 roads and to promote the town centre as a desirable shopping destination. The improvements will also improve the safety of the area, especially for pedestrians travelling between the 2 areas, as well as making the areas significantly more accessible for disabled users, with the usual level surfaces and there being no curbs and lips that would create difficulties for wheelchair users and pushchairs and buggies. The proposal complies with LTP policies to support the vitality and viability of the town centre. And as said, that loss of 3 spaces, I think, is more than made up with the significant number provided very close by in Asda, which has also got disabled spaces close to the library and one-stop shop. So as part of, to sum up, we'd recommend approval.
Thank you, Phil. Again, most members were there on Friday to view the layout of this, and I think it's greatly going to improve the area. Councillor Higginson, I believe this is your ward, is it? Or
Well, in
next
part,
to it?
Madam Chairman, but because they altered it all around, I mean, the area, if you look at it to the left of Woodstock Way as you go up, was my ward, and the other was the town centre ward. But my ward is
You're very familiar then with anyway.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's a shame that this is, that this wasn't done at the same time with the Asda development. And all the necessary precautions been taken, I think, to make the area safer. The closure of the exit to the current what is known as Waitrose car park will make it that much safer, because as a consequence of that closure, there's not to be much vehicular traffic going down that particular road. I mean, there's 2 shops there, certainly Bargain Booze is one, and then the one-stop shop, which is a quite busy shop in the Caldicot Town Centre. They have deliveries, but I don't see as a particular problem to it, because it's only a couple of times a week the big vehicles get down there. And the other issue is, of course, that it's also access to the area at the back of the shops there, where the barber shop and that is, and the fish shop and that. So it's not going to be a serious. It's not going to be any. It'll be an improvement, I'm sure. And the other bit is, of course, that by altering the configuration within the car park, we know is Waitrose car park. The entry and the exit are going to be in the same area, although it's going to be altered a bit, as Phil pointed out there now. So I think it's perfectly acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Chair. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is the disabled bays, particularly by the library. There are some in the Asda's car park, but I believe they're at a higher level, aren't they, than the library access. And I wonder if there's something that could be done, maybe to put a couple of disabled bays up nearer the library in the car park. It's just a thought. Apart from that, I think it's a brilliant idea, and I hope ultimately when we have our Morrisons in Abergavenny, that similar thoughts will be placed to allowing people from the shop to get into the town. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Jim Higginson again.
Yeah, if I may come back on the comment I've just made. There's a car park for something like about 10, maybe 12 vehicles at the back of the library, but they used by library people in part and one-stop shop people in part. but there's certainly one disabled bay. I believe there's two there. They need relining, and if you like, just to make it, to make it more obvious that they are disabled car parks, but they are there. And to go to a disabled car parks, there are a number in the car park that we know as Waitrose car park, and they could be reconfigured in a better way and possibly make more available.
So that can be overcome to your mind anyway. Thank you. Do you wish to move, Councillor Higgins? Do you have a seconder for approval? Councillor Brian Strong. Thank you. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Go to page 26, and that's Abergavenny.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission for the erection of a two-storey rear extension at 14 Chestnut Drive, Park Pennyval, Abergavenny. That's the property in question. Members saw it last Friday. It would adjoin a previously built two-storey rear extension which was granted in 2011. The rear of the dwelling is of extremely limited view from a public vantage point, would therefore have a minimal impact on the wider amenity of the area. The primary issue is considered to be the impact of the proposed extension on the adjacent property, number 16, which is set at a lower level. If we go through the photographs, that's the property on the left, and the two-storey extension would mirror the existing two-storey extension and fill in that gap there. The rear of the properties are northeasterly facing and receive limited sunlight from midday onwards. The proposed extension would meet the 45-degree rule in relation to the habitable room in number 16. Therefore, the proposal is not considered to be harmful in relation to loss of sunlight. Whilst the proposed extension would be located close to the boundary and in a slightly elevated position, it is not considered to be unacceptably overbearing as to warrant refusal. Officers therefore recommend approval of this application, subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
Thank you, Paul. A local member, Councillor Powell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is one of these where you go in one garden, it looks like one thing, you go in the other garden, it looks different. The first time I went there, we looked at number 14, we went out the back and we could see, we thought, well, this is going to look fine because of the way the sun goes, it's not going to affect the light very much. But then when we went next door into number 16 and realised how much lower that was, and we had to look up to where the new building was going to be, we then realised if not so much taking the light away, but it would have that rather overbearing effect on that house. So you've got two things to look at. You've got to wonder whether the amenity of the property at number 16 is going to be affected, and whether you feel it is overdevelopment, or whether you feel that because it doesn't actually take the sunlight which is round the other side of the houses during the day, middle day and afternoon, whether it's not going to have an effect. And these are things that you have to sum up when you think about this. It's always a problem when you've got neighbours side by side who've got building going on and how it's going to affect each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Douglas-Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say that the site visit was an interesting experience last Friday to do the comparison between number 14 and number 16. And quite frankly, I think the amenity of number 16 will be very seriously affected by this extension. It will completely dominate the sort of patio area conservative of number 16 itself. And there is no way that I can support this particular application. And in fact, I'm going to move that we actually refuse it.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You've all got, I don't know if you've all got the drawing. There's a drawing in front of us. It's not that drawing, but it's similar. But if you actually build that again in the space that's to the right, that 45 degrees is well into the area next door, We went there, and I'm absolutely determined that the shadowing that's going to be provided, all right, yes, the sun goes round after lunchtime, but up until lunchtime there is sun into that area, but the light there will be taken away, not necessarily the sunlight, but the light will be extensive, and I'm with Doug Edwards on this. It's just too dominant. Just going further, this is already an extension. We've extended into the roof. So we could put a single story on here, that wouldn't be a problem. But it's the second story which is going to cause the problem. And I personally could not vote for this.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Harris, then Councillor Strong, then Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have to agree with all the comments that have been made so far. It's only when you get there and stand in the lower garden that you just realise how imposing the extension will be. And I think it'll be an interesting test case, in actual fact, if it does transpire that we refuse this application. It is, as far as I'm concerned, much too imposing, and if it could be looked at as a single story, as Councillor Clark has suggested, then I'm sure the majority of us, if not all of us, will go along with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just really to say that the occupant of number 16, I think, has agreed that if it was a single-storey extension, he would be happy with it. He wouldn't object to it. So whether we have to go back and ask for that, I don't know.
Councillor Strong, that would have to be a completely new application. Councillor Dovey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with much of what has been said. There has been developments, if you're looking at the back of the house to the right, there has been developments to further on down. But those in the main have been conservatories, and the impact of the development has been minimised to some extent because the houses are stepped. They're not in a straight row, so the houses are stepped. So effectively, those extensions, developments, conservatories, whatever you want to call them, are behind the line, the building line at the rear. So the impact is less. It is right. It isn't about shadowing. It is actually it's about the removal of light from the neighbouring property. They will constantly be looking up at this brick wall, which will be really bad. It is totally overpowering. It's so overdevelopment of that plot completely, and I couldn't vote for it.
Councillor Dovey. Councillor Taylor, please.
Just to say that I agree, I think it does significantly detract from the residential amenity of the neighbouring property, and I'd like to second Councillor Edwards' proposal to move refusal.
Thank you. May I ask the officers, they've had an extension, I don't know what percentage that is of the original, so does it make a difference as this is going to be another extension from the,
Not in this location, because it's in a built-up area. If it was in the open countryside, then that would
there
be
is a percentage significance, but not in a street.
Only in the open countryside.
Right, thank you, Phil, for that clarification of that. Right, you've had it moved for refusal and seconded for refusal. Could I have show of hands for refusal, please?
That's 13 votes for refusal.
Those for approval? Abstentions?
One abstention.
Right, thank
The
you.
application's moved for refusal, Chairman.
Thank you.
We'll come back for the reason.
Yeah, they will come back to the next committee. Right, thank you all very much for your attendance. Yes.
Yeah.